seeing here. Oh, Kimye, you're the best. Okay. So this is the draft DEI agreement. And so if you, I wish I could put these two documents side by side so I could crosswalk them. But if you remember the model, what you're seeing here on the bottom half of this, and I'll get back to the top, is that those groups that you saw, the foundation group, the internal group, bridging group, and external group. And you're seeing these categories more unpacked underneath these groups. So for, like, as an example, for the foundation group, this category 1, vision, strategy, and business impact. So I put a best practices summary right there. So I'll just give you an example. So in best practices under this category, DEI is integral to an organization's value, mission, and culture. It has well-defined vision and mission, understanding its business impact, measurable goals, track progress. It's aiming for equitable representation, inclusion, and belonging. And the organization is recognized as a DEI leader. So that is best practices level 5. And so going back to the top of this DEI agreement, this is pretty similar in terms of the language that you saw before. We're asking you to commit to working on DEI goals, but instead of saying this list of 13 things, we're saying please select 4 things and self-report what level you meet that goal. And then what we're going to be asking is for you to update this at some cadence, and we'll talk about that, and let us know your progress, or no progress because why, and how we can. So the point is, again, we're making this more dynamic, we're making it more impactful. We're trying to figure out how we can best support our partners on their DEI journey. So this is, like, as I mentioned, this will be a registry format. It'll look like a survey and not a document. And the act of filling out that survey is your registration and signature. So one last thing I want to pull up, and then I'll give space for clarifying questions, is just switched again to another document. And all of this content, as I said, once we get these documents more buttoned up and finalized, we'll have a longer discussion about this later. So I just wanted to share the levels really quick, because I know I said it, but it's difficult conceptually without seeing something. So we have level 1 inactive. So no DEI work has begun. Diversity, equity, and inclusion are not part of organizational goals. The GDEIB, suggests everybody should be at least at level 3. So level 3, clear awareness of the value of DEI, starting to implement DEI systemically. This is what is required and expected of all organizations. And then, as I mentioned before that, best practices, exemplary strategies, responsive actions, best practices in DEI. So that's kind of the scale that we will be using. Okay, so I'm gonna stop and give a couple minutes here to clarifying anything. And Kimye, if you have anything to add, please go for it.
No, I'm sorry about starting the recording a little bit late. I would just reiterate that that a few of the triggers for this reevaluation and revision of the static agreement are that, one, at the agency level, the agency is adopting a new framework and model, and we are working to kind of pull that through the work of the various divisions throughout the agency. And so that is underpinning some of the transformation of the DEI agreement. And then additionally, I think that, there has been a commitment all along from the division that the original DEI agreement was a first step. right? And so this, like you said, this is the next kind of I can't speak English right now. Incremental, excuse me, movement towards really integrating our equity and racial justice values and priorities, and our internal DEI work into our various processes. So that's what I would add.
Thanks, Kimye. So I'm not paying attention to the actual chat, but if anybody has any questions, if not, then I'm gonna put us into the engagement part with our queued up questions.
We do have a couple of comments and questions that have been put on the Easy Retro board, and please, everybody, feel free to put your thoughts and your feedback on what you've heard so far into the Easy Retro board. But a couple of questions. One in here is really related to, you know, what is OHCS's commitment, and how are those commitments to DEI being reflected in how we're working and doing some systemic and structural breakdowns of the barriers that are causing some challenges and inequities in housing and development. I think it's a really critical and important question, and I think one piece of this DEI agreement revision is, you didn't see it here, but there is also a commitment, an introduction and commitment statement that that will be part of kind of the bigger work that we're doing for this agreement, and also for some of the other pieces that we're talking about through the engagement. So there is an actual kind of statement there that will be presented and help to kind of ensure that we absolutely are committed to doing the internal work, and it may happen very slowly, and it may not be as easy and visible to see, but there is a lot of work happening behind the scenes to do this very stuff. So
yeah, one thing I want to say is there's a little bit of a conflation, I think, between MWSB participation and DEI work. So as I know, the MWSB is related to contractors and, you know, ensuring that we're using diverse subs on our construction sites. This DEI agreement is really organizational, and it's internal and external goals organizationally. So that internal stuff of like what you're doing related to your human capital, what your mission and vision are, what your training is, what your leadership positions are, and that interface, and then how you're working with your external partners as well. But these are organizational items. So I want to clarify that, because I'm getting kind of I'm seeing MWESB and DEI in the same questions, and I'll have to spend some time unpacking them later. But so if that helps provide any more context, I want to make sure that's clear. Clayton.
Yeah, I posted the comment about just kind of organizational commitments that OHCS is doing, and I guess I've been in enough of these conversations over the last 2 or 3 years, and all I've on my end, and I guess on the kind of developer side, is all I've seen is a increase in the reporting burden, the commitment burden, and the public commitments that developers have had to make. And I haven't really seen any of that you know, and it may be happening, but I haven't seen any of that behind the scenes work or interagency collaboration or kind of that commensurate OHCS stepping up to the table at the same level that OHCS is requiring developers and project teams to step up to. And I think it really, at least from my perspective in rural areas, is a big detriment to creating, you know, both MWSB project teams that are hitting percentages, but also structurally competent project teams when it comes to bringing in those DEI principles. And so I think I would love to see a demonstration of that work happening at the organizational level in a way that feels like, you know, OHCS is flexing their muscles at the same level that you're asking your developers and your project partners to. So
yeah, thank you for that. And that was a big reason to align the GDEIB as our guiding DEI strategy with this DEI agreement. And I also just want to say, you know, we've sort of conceptually mapped out 3 phases for this that build on each other. We're at phase 1. We're trying to create a system to gather information that isn't going to be burdensome, that, you know, it's going to it's going to be simple, and that we can you know, our sponsors can fill out easily, and that we can also evaluate relatively easily. So as we build upon this and start to articulate what comes of this new DEI agreement, this new dynamic DEI agreement, we're going to certainly keep you abreast of that. But just note that we're making baby steps as we're also heading through the journey as well. Let me pull up this chat. So many things to look at. Robin, I see that you had a question a little earlier. So yeah, so the DEI agreement is not at all related to the COVID and GC requirements. This is an organizational document. We're trying to understand where your organization is on meeting various diversity, equity, and inclusion goals. And once you take a look at that DEI agreement, I think it'll be a little clearer. That you'll see that the categories are really asking about what you were doing in your house to ensure that your organization is inclusive and that you're working on a culture of inclusivity, that your hiring systems are equitable, that the things that you're doing are equitable, that people have voice, especially people of color or underrepresented groups have voice in your organization. So that is definitely the distinction there. Diana.
Thank you. So I'm just curious to know, is it the Wisconsin plan that you've been looking at? Is that what you said, or was it another state?
No, so I think you might be thinking of pre-qualification.
Okay, you're right. That's right.
Okay, yeah.
Too many things on the brain, but let me ask my question.
Sure.
I think it's no secret, and I think the last person spoke a little to this, that smaller rural organizations, you know, it's not so much that we don't access underserved minority persons for staffing, is that a lot of our organizations have been so stretched lately that it's very risky to hire new people when we have expertise in the house. And so we are very committed, and we are very happy to seek new employees in this context. But it's almost detrimental to our organization, given the capacity that exists with our expertise of years, to move out of that. So all we can really say is our commitment lies with hiring new and expanding. And I just wondered how that plays. And I'm very glad that you talked about the difference between the minority, women, emerging, small business, COVID, self-certifying business, and this. And so I just want to talk a little bit about that. There's this big challenge between who we have, what they know, expertise, and engaging for the sake of DEI new employees, even though our hearts are committed there. So I just want to say that. Thank you.
Yeah, I have a response to that. So I would want to say that is a piece of internal and external diversity, equity, and inclusion work in organizations. And that is a smaller piece of that internal human capital systems development work. What I think you'll find as you start to read through these categories is it's not necessarily that you're going out to find a certain number of folks. And also that we're looking at diversity as not necessarily just race, right? So there's gender diversity, there's age diversity, there's educational diversity, there's lots of diversity in an organization. So that is a piece of that sort of internal work that you would do. There's much more around that. And largely it's about making sure that the systems are equitable so that you are not making it easier for a majority group to accelerate or advance and making it more difficult for a woman or a person of color to advance. So to be clear, it is very broad, and there are about, I think, 15 different categories of something like 275 different benchmarks that you could work on here. So I do recommend looking at that GDEIB to give you a little bit more context on the work that you would do in your organization.
That is very helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Christopher.
All right. Hey, my question is, I guess, big picture, like what Clayton already touched on, and that is like, what does OHCS intend to do with this data once it's collected? So like you touched on that we're at phase 1, data collection. What does phase 2 and phase 3 look like? And I guess similar, if it's at all different, but like what would like a successful DEI revamp look like for you? Or what would you consider successful?
So I'm going to answer your second question first. I think referring back to that GDEIB, and I also need to say this, the GDEIB is the strategy that we are using for our DEI work, our internal DEI work. It does not mean that you have to use that as a strategy. There are other strategies out there. It happens to be a really good, decent one. So I would, for examples, Christopher, I would go and look at best practices in that document and you'll see what that looks like. And that's what we're going to be gauging on because we're using those levels and those categories, largely because we don't have in-house expertise to create assessments. Maybe Michael and I could take a couple shots at creating assessments. So we are relying on this external tool as our measure of scale. So we're not going to necessarily be inventing that. And then now I'm forgetting your first question. Oh, accountability, yes. Okay, so that's our question queued up here. And we have a short amount of time because I wasn't watching the clock. But it's a good question. So what does accountability look like? And if you don't mind, I would like to kind of turn that on you. You know, does accountability look like we should be somehow relating a benefit, a carrot to making progress? And I also don't necessarily know that we can. We haven't engaged in those conversations legally yet, but we're aware that, you know, we have to talk with our counsel about these things. Does it mean that, you know, that yeah, there's still like what level of progress is movement, and is that, should we be expecting our partners to be at a certain level? Like I mentioned, I think the level 3 was like best practices or something like that. So if any or all of you would have any thoughts about that, because we do have both ends, you know, we, you know, at this point in time, and there's no real talk about adding a carrot or a stick to any of this. We're just want to know where folks are at and help provide them with support. That is our general base at this time. So, but then there are folks that believe that there should be strong accountability measures to this, that progress, nobody should be at a 3 even, everybody should be exemplary. You know, it, like with anything, you have both ends. So I would turn that question back on you to help inform us. Like, at this point, we're just watching and being supportive.
I think I would also like to add, you know, there is a question on the Easy Retro board, and I think this is really helpful to us as we introduce this. But you know, how can we best support your organizations in utilizing this new tool, in making progress, whatever that is that you have determined for yourself, what progress is along that trajectory, because there are resources that we could be looking at to kind of pair with this work. But we just need to know, you know, part of this initial foray is wanting to understand, like, how best can we help move you along? Because this is important to us. And so how best can we create some resources to support you in moving along this journey as well?
Thanks, Kimye. You know, one thing that I'm really interested in while we have these last 30 seconds is based off of what I have explained to you so far, and I know that everybody here probably needs to spend some time with the DEI agreement and the GDEIB, but I'm really interested in what cadence we should be asking for progress. I think our general inclination was something like annually. You know, does it make sense for somebody to embark, let's say if they're completely inactive on any DEI work, you know, would it take them about a year to get somewhere? Would it take, you know, should our expectations be that it's quarterly? Like, we want to see some type of movement or progress in some shape or form quarterly. So I really want to get to that because it's a functional piece of this DEI agreement. And if any of you have thoughts, note that a survey link is also going to be sent out. So if you could please read those documents and help provide any thoughts about that, that would be great. If you have any thoughts right now, please let me know or add them, and we're going to get kicked out shortly. I just got the notice.
Still have 50 seconds.
Oh, sorry. That's a lot.
So then, Trinity, if I heard you correctly, the idea right now for OHCS is, with all of this data collection on DEI work, DEI progress, OHCS's intention is just to act as support at the moment. It's not, is that
Correct.
the intention of collecting this data?
That is correct.
Okay.
And it wouldn't be reported out on an individual level or anything like that. It really truly is just to get an aggregate kind of understanding of where our partners are at and where we can support them in moving along their own journey.
All right, welcome back, everyone. We hope the breakout rooms were fruitful discussion. I had the opportunity to party hop a little bit and go and check out the breakout rooms, and sounded like really rich discussion. So thank you again for being active, engaged participants in these topics. We do really appreciate all of your feedback and input, both in the live sessions, but also in the other ways that you can engage. So as soon as we close this meeting, the topic surveys will be available, and we'll keep those surveys open for about 2 weeks because there's a lot of stuff, right? All of the topics. And then if you're also interested in loan guarantee, there's surveys specific to those programs as well. So it's a lot of stuff, and recognize that. We know you all are super busy people. Appreciate you taking the time to review the materials and provide us this specific input. So you got a couple weeks, and we'll also be posting the recording from this meeting as well as the breakout rooms as soon as we can, so that you can then view the other breakout rooms that you weren't able to attend today. And you might want to view those before you complete the survey. Feel free to do that. Remember, the discussion documents are on the website now, so feel free to look at those materials as well. And then what we do is we start synthesizing the input that we received from the Easy Retro boards today, and then we'll combine it with the survey responses so that we can have a complete synthesis for each topic posted on our website, so that you see the compilation of the different responses and input to the questions that we're seeking. So right now, the readiness synthesis is available on our website. For those who were able to find it, we posted that on Monday before we sent out the technical advisory and the materials for this meeting. So we were trying to maintain that cadence where we are providing you the synthesis at the same time that we're providing the materials for the next sequence of topics that we're covering. So we hope that that's working for you. There is, obviously a lot of great input that we're receiving. So we're trying to do what we can and group and create themes for the input that you're providing us, so that you all can see that. The other thing is just also acknowledging there are a lot of links. And so I will send a follow-up email to all the registrants from this meeting so that you have that. And I'm going to put my email in the chat. If anyone has any issues accessing the materials, please feel free to reach out to me directly, and I will work with you to make sure that you can view those materials and you have access to the surveys and all of those things as well. So I'm going to put my email in the chat before we close. And then I did just want to flag also the upcoming engagement meetings, as well as we will be live in person at Housing Oregon on Thursday, September 28th. We have a session at 3:15 that afternoon, and we're very much looking forward to being in person and being able to have some human interaction instead of just the Zoom space, which is very efficient, but also looking forward to just have an opportunity to meet with you there if you're able to attend. And then we have upcoming session October 12th, where we will begin talking about funding frameworks, and then follow that up later in October, October 26th, with the part 2 of our funding frameworks discussion. So those are the kind of administrative pieces there around how we're running the engagement and collecting your input, synthesizing the input, and where you can find us in the near term as well. So with that, I think I'll turn it over to Natasha and help us close out this meeting today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Kim, and gratitude to the OHCS team who has orchestrated all of this content and breakout rooms, and to all of you who are engaging and giving input. I obviously we can't do this work without you, and really want to make sure that we strike the balance well in terms of both identifying consequences, impacts of change and transition, and making sure that we are putting in the strategies that we need to mitigate those impacts where they are not the ones we want to see. And so really in that mindset, keeping this engagement earnest, really focusing on real places where there are yet to be determined decisions and direction, and a lot of moving parts in the mix of all of that. I am, let's see, I think I do see in the chat the comments around questions about the breakout room discussions, all of the comments in those are being or have been or will be translated over to the retro board as a place where you can go and reference and make sure you're downloading any of your near-term thoughts. And then there will also be the survey, and again, mostly all synthesized back in. If there's something very in particular that you were wanting to get a copy of, please just raise that flag with Kim, and we can track it back with you. And, you know, in terms of our Housing Oregon discussion, as Kim has referenced, we're kind of recapping on the broad vision of change, the conversations that we've had to date. We'll kind of key in on a few additional areas, but really trying to use the in-person time to add a different type of feedback and engagement back in, and understanding that we are, you know, this process is big and it is all interconnected. And we are also working to stand up different side pieces of conversations with focused feedback. You know, some of it has come through our engagement conversations here about groups that we might want to prioritize a centered, focused conversation for rural and culturally specific development partners. I was really happy this week to be able to go forward with the Racial Justice Council, to be able to have provide a very high level update of the change and direction, and get some really good feedback on areas where we want to make sure to be able to put in, again, these mitigating strategies in terms of the impact of competition on culturally specific providers, tribes, and others, and was able to also flag, you know, this is also the opportunity to think again, as I was referencing at the front end, you know, what is it that needs to be competitive versus what do we want to make sure we can have an expedited path to support and sustain our growing pipeline across the state. And so really looking for all of, you know, a wide range of opportunities to be able to have, again, this core foundational engagement, but also, you know, strategic side conversations to make sure we're seeing 360 as much as possible. We will be continuing to bring this work to Housing Stability Council. I think I'm looking to find ways to use those conversations more as a work session versus a formal presentation. And so we'll be, you know, I know council members are very much wanting to engage and give meaningful input. And so I think we'll be seeing some of the same materials come forward to them to have more generative dialogue in that space as well. And so I guess with that, we can wrap ourselves up. Really, again, overwhelming gratitude for you and all of the feedback that you've given already. And we'll hope we'll continue to provide in this process, and just real appreciation for all the work that you are doing. So thank you so much.
Thank you all. Take care.